Welcome back to Unleash Your Creativity. I am Yvonne Davis and this is David Steele. We're accredited facilitators with the Rocky Mountain Compassionate Communication Network. And this program is a blending of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron and Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. So we're still in week 9, and that is on the topic of recovering a sense of compassion. So in our last video, we talked about how in a particular situation where a need wasn't met, you can bring yourself back to compassion. So we're going to do that. That was on an intimate relationship. So now we're going to do it on something that is kind of more, in a sense, abstract, but still very important.
And possibly even more challenging.
So we're going to talk about when your needs, the needs that you value, are not being met by the leaders who are having, I'm just going to talk about the White House specifically, at that level, the national level, not meeting needs. And I'm not talking about the whole nation. I'm talking about you specifically, you who are watching this video. Yeah, the needs that you have. And if you feel that your leaders, and again, I'm talking on the national level, are not meeting your needs.
They're not reflecting your values.
Yeah, they're not reflecting your values. They're not meeting needs that you value. How do you bring yourself back to compassion? So do you want to lead this? Do you want me to talk more about that?
Well, my number one question is, does compassion sell? Lead people back to compassion?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
You're gonna, all of a sudden,
your ratings are going to go way down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You lead.
Okay. That you brought up a really good point, which is that our political system, I think, virtually everyone would agree that our political system in this country has become extremely divisive. And so we want to talk about that both from the perspective of nonviolent communication and from the perspective of creativity. So that's what I want to start with is.
What about the perspective of compassion?
And compassion. I was saying nonviolent communication is compassion, compassionate communication. So, so I want to start with that. And it wasn't always this divisive in this country. There was a time when people in Washington, regardless of their political party, they spent a lot of time together, not just in Congress, not just when they were working, but they socialized together. They spent a lot of time socializing together.
Mm-hmm.
And so
they actually lived there.
Yeah, they lived in Washington. That was their world. That was their community. And a time came when people, certain individuals, they intensified the divisiveness. And I think maybe to some degree because they wanted to promote their own values, but also I think to some degree because it brought them attention. And I am going to mention 2 people specifically, Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter. And the reason why I'm mentioning them in particular is because they, I'm going to say they were entertainers who were using political information not only to promote their values, but also to a large degree to get attention for themselves. So it wasn't just about we're going to make a rational argument for why we value certain things and for the strategies that we think we can use to promote those values, but rather, instead of doing that, the way that they conveyed their message was to make the other side the enemy. And not just to create an enemy image, but to use language that was very divisive. And
not only is the other side the enemy, they're evil.
yes, they're evil. And you may say they're
a threat to civilization.
Yes.
Our very survival is at stake.
Yes. And like, for example, saying that they're treasonous and that they are stupid, that they're incompetent, and just anything you could say, whether true or not, whether you had any evidence or not. It wasn't about making an argument. It was about making the other side wrong.
And eliciting an emotional response in the viewer.
Yes, exactly. Because when you do that, then you bypass the intellect and you go straight to the amygdala, which is what's sometimes called the lizard brain, or the mammalian brain, the animal brain. And we lose touch with the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, they're just because this is public, the lizard brain and the mammalian brain are different.
Yes, I know that.
Okay.
That's why I said animal brain, because there are three brains. Since we're going to get into the technicalities of this, there are three brains. The lowest is sometimes called the reptilian or the lizard brain. And then the second brain is the mammalian brain. And the third brain is the Homo sapien brain, which is the cortex. So, so just go back to the animal brain part of the brain before we develop the cortex. And that is all driven by emotion and fear, anger, and also positive things, but they were using...
I disagree.
Okay, go ahead.
You're talking about the mammalian brain. The animal brain, the lizard brain, is the stimulus response brain. That's the brain that knows how to move from the gas pedal to the brake when it sees an accident up ahead. And then 2 seconds later, your mind catches up with what your body did.
Yeah.
And it's the part of the brain that notices sudden motion.
Yeah.
And directs where our attention goes. And yes, its purpose is to keep us safe, but the strong emotional stuff comes in when you get into the mammalian brain and the limbic system, and do I belong? Am I safe? The reptilian brain is more just to deliver the information.
Okay. I didn't really want to get into that complexity, but the point that I wanted to make is that there's a lower animal brain that is driven by emotion and reaction.
Right.
And then there's the higher brain, the cortex, that is that thinks things through. And so the purpose of making someone an enemy and not using rational arguments is because then you can bypass the cortex and go straight into the emotion, and you can activate fear and anger.
Right.
And that can get you a lot of attention.
And stimulate action.
Right. And so it's very effective, especially for someone who, is producing a radio show, and I'm talking about the news too. I'm not just going to say, this is just people like Rush Limbaugh or Ann Coulter who had a radio show or book, but also the news media has used this as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Drives up ratings.
And so the point is that it didn't used to be like this. This is a change that we have seen in our own lifetime. And it has increased divisiveness. And so now we're at the point where we can't even listen to the other side, even though we're all Americans. We have that in common, This is our fatherland. It's our home. We're all Americans. So in that sense, we have something very fundamental in common. So why are we making each other enemies?
Well, because you're out to destroy America. It's as simple as that.
See, even I know you're saying that like just to be kind of maybe sarcastic or a joke, but even hearing that is so triggering. I feel really uncomfortable.
Okay, talk about that.
Okay. Because it was a statement of fact as if it were true, without any evidence about why you think that, what, nothing.
So talk about your feelings that came up. You said it's triggering.
It's triggering because...
Describe the trigger, not why, but just describe the trigger.
Fear.
Okay, so yeah. Fear comes up.
Fear. Because I am thinking to myself, if that's what some people are saying, say it again. What did you say that triggered you?
No, you said we're all Americans. I said, then why are you out to destroy America?
Okay, yes. So basically what that's saying is that there are groups of people who are out to destroy America. And I don't believe that. And I will say that even though in my psychic tarot astrology readings that I do about political leaders, and sometimes, I may be talking about people who are currently indicted or possibly maybe indicted for things that they have done, I don't actually believe that they were out to destroy America. I think they did have a goal in mind. They were trying to meet needs, but that in their minds, they weren't thinking, I'm out to destroy America. In fact, when, let's take, for example, the Trump campaign, his slogan was, "Make America Great Again." And I think they really believed that they could, They may have had other goals as well that they were trying to meet, personal goals, but
there's an implicit thing there too, which is America is no longer great. In that statement, there's the implication that America is no longer great.
Yeah, but I guess what I want to say is that the statement that some people want to destroy America, I'm talking about Americans. I'm not talking about Russians, Koreans, I should say North Koreans, Iranians, Chinese, people who sometimes, we haven't had the coziest of relationships with, that they might actually do things to gain power. But Americans ourselves. I don't believe that there are any Americans, or if there are, they are a very, very small percentage. But in general, there are no Americans who actually want to destroy our country. They don't want that. They wanted something that the way that they went about trying to meet that need, other people thought that's not a good strategy. And we think that when you do that, you're going to harm the country. But that doesn't mean that that's what they intended to do. They didn't intend to destroy the country. Okay, does that make sense?
So what's really coming up for me as you're talking is just a tremendous amount of sadness. Because
it's true. I do feel sadness about the divisiveness.
Because last year when I did a series, last year being 2016, when I did a series on how to work with all of the turbulence and trauma and turmoil, it was amazing to me that I could talk to people about their divorce or the trouble their kids were in. And as soon as we talk about political stuff, they'd go off the charts in terms of emotional response and switching into that mammalian limbic fear brain. And I just wondered, why is that we can talk about these really tough issues that are happening in the living room? Then when we get out to talking politics, why does it stimulate such strong reaction? And you want to hear my answer? One of the things that is absolutely key to our well-being is a sense of shared reality. that fits right into where I belong. I know what my role is. I know what's expected of me. And a lot of the angst that we go through as teenagers is figuring out what the contours of that shared reality is, so that we know how to belong, how to fit in. That's hardwired into our brain. And at the same time, of course, we have to have, I couldn't say of course, but because we've got the cortex, since you're talking brain, that individuality and that striving to express ourselves, my striving to express myself and contribute my uniqueness to the world, is also an incredibly powerful drive. So we've got these two drives going. And so what's, in my opinion, what's going on our fundamental belief system, the frame we view the world through, the spin we put on things, the paradigm we live in, there's many ways of talking about it now, actually determines how our brain filters the information that comes in through the reptilian system. And determines what gets sent up into higher awareness and what we become conscious of. And so depending on those belief systems, our consciousness, our awareness will be focused on different things, and then the stuff that we don't focus on is invisible to us. But it might be the most important thing in someone else's life. And yet we need that shared reality. We need that consistency for our well-being. So we find the apps that someone could subscribe to or be immersed in a reality that's contradictory to ours because it's not visible to us, and be really fervent about it, is absolutely terrifying, because it implies that we can't trust the evidence of our own senses. So we're not going to put up with that. We're going to react with fear and anger to protect ourselves. Because if my reality is true, yours can't possibly be true.
Right.
And so you're out to destroy my world. And so it feels life-threatening at a certain level.
Yeah.
And so the big challenge, this is not, here we are the artist's way. You tapped into something really different. But the big challenge for us as a species is to develop the security and confidence in our own being and our own sense of self, that these other ways of looking at the world are not threatening, because we are so secure in who we are. And then we can actually look at them with curiosity instead of abhorrence, and respond with compassion instead of hatred. And so I think that's why it's such a big deal to people. And then you compound that by the fact that because we're in that fight, flight, freeze mode when we feel our reality is threatened and we want to take action, there are all of these industries that are designed to feed that so that we give them money. And so there is this huge economic incentive to perpetuate the divisiveness and the anxiety, the anger, because it drives up sales. And so it's a problem that we as a species are really in the middle of. To me, it's the calling of our times, working through this, because it's just big. It's very, very big. And it's a result of the interconnected world. It didn't used to matter what people in the other valley were thinking, because I never went to the other valley. You know, now with the internet, I'm all over the world and I'm exposed to all this different stuff. So how do I develop that sense of security and interconnectedness that I find difference is not so threatening? To me, that's the challenge. That's why I do these videos.
Well, one thing you brought up is how does this relate to creativity? I think it does, because the question for me is not about well, first of all, using compassion to heal the divisiveness so we can actually listen to each other as Americans and understand that we do share our love for this country. We all share that. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, Tea Party, Green Party, anything. I don't think there, like I said, anybody who's American who, if they think they want to destroy this country, it's such a minuscule percentage of people. Like maybe 3 people in the country, out of 300 million,
So I had a realization. Because generally my experience in the past is I kind of stay away from political topics with you. Mm-hmm. Because you do get triggered, you get really upset really easily. And very authentically upset. And I just realized that I think, and I juxtapose that with how, when you saw 9/11 happen, how traumatic that was, mm-hmm. and it changed the whole course of your life. Mm-hmm. And you left the prescribed mechanical corporate world where you just get promotions and financial security because you really felt called to do something that was pertinent to what was going on in the world mm-hmm. that brought about 9/11. Mm-hmm. And I just realized that your love for this country is so great that it causes so much pain in you to see all of this, mm-hmm. that it's just almost impossible to bear because your love is so great.
Yes, I would say that's true.
Yeah. So that was an example of compassion right there, mm-hmm. of tapping beneath the surface and looking at, what's going on.
Yeah.
At the subterranean mm-hmm. levels, mm-hmm. not at the level of language.
Yeah. And I wanted to, bring in how creativity is related to this.
Okay.
And so what I wanted to say.
So are we complete with what I said? Because I just want to check in with you before we move to the next topic. If you have anything you want to add to what I just said, and you may not.
No, that was true. Okay. Yeah. I do love this country. I love my fellow Americans. And I remember actually after the election, I got so frustrated with social media and the way it kept intensifying that divisiveness. I just stopped. Yeah. And
there were computer programs operating below the surface that were deliberately cultivating that divisiveness, yes. because it brought in more advertising dollars.
Yeah. And also, as we're finding out that Russia was actually
feeding it also.
Yeah. So anyway, I just stopped, and I at that particular time in my life, right after the election, I ended up moving across country from California to Florida. And so just the drive itself, and especially in the South, because especially as you're moving southeast, I was moving into Trump territory. And I remember, like meeting people. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. Maybe I went to a campground or I was in a diner or something like that, surrounded by people, local people, and listening to their accents and things that they talked about and the way that they decorated. And I just thought, I love this country. I love these people, I don't care who they voted for. They're my people, and I just feel so much sadness about how could we hate people that we, it's like maybe they're in Arizona or maybe they're in Mississippi and I've never met them. How can I hate them? You know?
So you're echoing something that has come out in many books now from people who have actually traveled to places, mm-hmm. that the divisiveness that lives in people's hearts and communities is not nearly as intense as the divisiveness that we see in the media, mm-hmm. whether it's social media, traditional media. That really, it's decent, reasonable people everywhere.
Yes, exactly.
And I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So how we bring creativity into that is that when we're soft, I talked about in the last video about compassion is when we're soft and we're present and we're open. that's where we're able to find solutions. You know, it's when we're cut off, when we just like slam that door down and say,
Right.
I'm not going to listen to you. You are
Right.
wrong. We shut down all the possibilities for creating solutions.
So let me say something about that I think is really important that people understand, because you talk about being soft. In some people's language structure, soft equates to weak.
Yeah.
You've got to be firm and hard
Yeah.
to be strong.
Right.
And compassion is not weak at all.
Right.
It really takes a lot of courage and connectedness to look at discomfort and wounding, to look at trauma and not hide from it.
Yeah.
And to actually give it the kind of acceptance and understanding that heals it. That is not weakling work at all.
Right.
So I just want to say, talked about the baby and being soft and strong. Babies are pretty helpless.
Yeah.
Compassion is not helpless.
Right.
You know, compassion, I think, really goes along with beginner's mind. If you want to talk about the innocence of children, there's kind of an innocence, an assumption of innocence that goes along with a compassionate perspective and a curiosity, like I just don't know, but it's okay. I can be, we talked in earlier videos about being okay with the unknown. And compassion is very much about being, not having to know, to be curious and to be secure enough that we're okay with the unknown. Yeah.
And so I want to take us back through the program, you know, the idea of identity, knowing who you are, being strong in your core.
Right.
And the power.
Right.
And integrity. That is strength. Integrity is strength.
That's right.
And, you know, and then even prior to this week, we did strength, you know. So she's been leading us up to this every step of the way before we arrived at compassion.
Right.
You know, that we build that strong inner core of that inner locus of power.
Right.
So that we know who we are, we know what our values are, and when we are strong and secure and grounded in that, that's when we can be open and listen, because we're not afraid, you know. It's like the fear comes when you don't have that inner
I would say it's a little different. And you can still be afraid, but the fear is not so much in the foreground that it doesn't necessarily dictate our action.
Right.
But I don't think it goes away.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, is that there's enough strength and power and inner locus of control and being grounded in that, centered in that, that even if there is some fear, you can overcome it enough to be open to hearing what others have to say and open enough to finding creative solutions. So I think I feel complete with this topic for today.
So where does the creativity come in? You said you wanted to get back to creativity.
That when you are open, when your heart is open and you're compassionate toward others, you can listen, then you're open to finding creative solutions. Okay. So, like I said, I feel complete with this. It is a hard topic. This is for me, was emotionally one of the most difficult videos to make. I do think, especially in the country now, that the political discourse is a very, very tough topic.
Yeah.
But I feel complete with this for now. Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. So once again, we are breaking ground here with this program. So. And I know this may have even been difficult for viewers to watch. So if it brought anything up for you and you want to talk about that, feel free to leave a comment in the discussion boxes below. And beyond that, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already. ring the bell for notifications. Share this video with your social media friends and family, because we're really striving to build this channel and build a community. Click like on this video, and just in general, let us know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, okay? We'd love to hear that. And we will see you for our next video tomorrow. Bye-bye.